Hey guys, Chris here from Kite Republic. I am here in Ballina today testing all of the latest from Slingshot, and I have with me Fred Hope, Mr. Foil himself.
Yeah, nice to finally be on camera with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to say it was really nice to watch you foiling as well, but now I know I got to get out there and practice for a hell of a lot longer.
Yeah, we all got to get better, don't we?
Very cool to see. Now, Fred, a very exciting year for Slingshot, and some of the stuff we've tested today has just been blowing our minds, which is
we got
awesome.
all the new candy for you.
Yeah, and I'm holding in front of me here what I would say was last year's standout, the Glide 925, that wing that did everything really well. You know, someone new to a lot of the sports could get on it and feel really comfortable, but it had a good bit of zing for the top end. There's something new.
Yeah.
What is it?
There's always got to be something new.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the Glide has its space, right? It's for the intermediate rider. They want it to have that stability, but have it kind of ride itself when you get a little out of control.
Absolutely.
So what we decided was, let's make it so it doesn't necessarily ride itself. When you enter a turn, it stays on that angle and keeps going, but then it's just as easy to roll back over to the new side when you want to carve on a hard turn, especially on small waves like we were just on. So yeah, we made the Flow. This is our 11 aspect ratio, new high aspect wing. It comes in 3 sizes, 600, 800, and 1000 square centimeters. The span on this 800 is 938, so span on that 925, 899. Pretty similar in terms of their overall span, but this one will roll even more, even though it's slightly wider in its wingspan. And the way we did that is there's basically 2 profiles blended on this wing, so that center 3/4 of each wing tip has one profile that we chose, and then the actual wing tip has a different profile that generates less lift. So there's a lot of lift coming from the center, less on the wing tip, and that gives you stability, overall lift, but then it allows you to roll from side to side without having these overpower the center of the wing overall.
Absolutely. So if we hold those next to each other there, who is it that's going to want to still be on the Glide versus the Flow? Yeah,
so the Glide all around super stable, user friendly, very balanced, and very predictable overall. As you go higher aspect, generally you get more efficiency, right? Better projection. That's what the Flows really have. But the other thing we wanted to do to make sure to differentiate it from other high aspects, but also from this Glide wing, is the distance from the mast leading edge to the trailing edge of the wing. So if you put these next to each other, you can see that that distance is quite a bit less on these two wings, on this Flow wing versus this one. So what that does is it really livens up the yaw overall. That in combination with less anhedral overall, you can see it's a flatter wing, allows it to really pivot like blowing your fins out on a surfboard. So that helps quite a bit. And then obviously in a high aspect wing, you want it to be efficient, project and accelerate really well. So you'll see that there's less sweep back in the center 3/4 again, right? Where that other profile is. You've got all the lift, or most of the wing breaching the same point in the water at the same time. So when you're pumping, it's working in unison. And then as you get to that wingtip that has that other profile, you can see we have a little bit of that DNA of the swept back wingtip that the Glide has. And that continues to have a little bit of that predictability overall, so you don't feel like you're getting skittish in the yaw, especially when you're going down the face of a wave, going a little too fast for riding. So yeah, kind of all those things in combination both differentiate it from our Glide series. That's a 9 aspect ratio, 8.8 to 9. And from other high aspect wings on the market that kind of will often get a little too locked out in the roll, especially on those bigger waves. So it is more rolly, it's more yaw friendly, and then it's got a little bit more of that pitch sensitivity as too, because of that shorter distance between the leading edge of the mast and the trailing edge of the front wing.
And for somebody debating, you know, what they're going to use for which parts of their quiver, what sports do you see yourself stepping into the new Flow range that previously you might have been on the Glides? And you know, and what sports will you obviously be riding other wings in the range?
So there's sometimes when I do like the predictability and the kind of like locked in pushback that I get out of the Glide series. That'd be kind of bigger waves where I want to have, I'll go smaller. We make plenty of size of the Glide. I'll go down to the 725, maybe even a 625. When I'm in big waves and I don't want to have too much looseness in my roll, where I want to feel very locked in. If I'm on a smaller wave like we are out here today, I want to be able to really spin it out a little bit and kind of play with it and push against it and have it kind of slip out, like driving the fins on your surfboard. So smaller waves, I'd ride this, or if I wanted to just downwind, I'd ride the Flow, because I want to have all of that efficiency, all the projection and acceleration to get from the wave I'm on to the next wave in front of me, especially in the ocean. I wouldn't use it for kite foiling. We have our own little subset of, of series of wings for those. But basically, if you want the maximum efficiency, glide, and projection forward, that acceleration to the next bump, go with the flows. If you want to have the predictability and you want to kind of have not necessarily training wheels, but that stability that you can push against and know that it's going to push back and keep you on your board, you'd go with the glide.
Absolutely, and I can very much see in every wing that I'm looking at. For those that aren't entirely familiar yet with the Slingshot range, obviously the One Lock system has just saved hours and hours and got so much more foiling time for people. Do you want to just give us a very quick run through for those that don't know it?
So the way it works is we wanted to solve for all the problems that screws have, right? You can strip your heads, they snap off in the fuselage, they corrode, you get that anodization or the corrosion between aluminum and carbon all the time, so you got to put linoleum or whatever kind of grease you can. We had that issue for years with Hoverglide, Phantasm, Ghost Whisperer, all the different platforms we've had. So we really set out, it was like 3.5 years ago when I first started at Slingshot, to invent a new way of putting a foil together that doesn't require any of that. So it can be toolless, it couldn't have any aluminum, it couldn't have any screws, and that's really what we've done. So the way that it works, I'll show you with this other stabilizer here, is we basically have a triangle shape in the bottom of our mast. We call it the mast collar, that this shape in here, another triangle slides into on the front wing. And then from the back, yet another triangle slides into the back. And so what happens is when inside the collar, when it pulls together, it's expanding in the system and it locks in. And so to get that to truly lock in really well, you put this latch, let's say it sits right here inside the mast, put this latch on, clamp it down, pulling together, and it's locking into the system in there. And it's so tight actually that when you open this, you've noticed it's impossible to pull out just straight, right? You have to wiggle it side to side and it slowly backs itself out. So it's pretty fail-safe in terms of how locked in it is, and you don't get any play in the system, even if the latch is open, because of the way that it's expanded and almost like locked itself in. And that's why we call it One Lock, is because
we've been super impressed. And look, you get your entire foil together in about a minute with no tools. I mean, that's your foiling time you get back.
It's also more incentivizing to actually try new foils. Like you're on a boat wake foiling and you're on, let's say you're on a Glide 925 and your buddy brings on their flow wing that we're talking about here. Hey, there's less of an incentive to try it because you know you're gonna have to use all the tools and take the foil off, and then that's time that you could be foiling when you're on your buddy's boat and you feel like you're kind of wasting his time, or you're on the beach and the waves are pumping and you don't want to come in and risk like trying to find the right screw to put your wing on. It
takes like the messing around away. This really works. We talked about the new flow wing. If you do already have a Glide, or even if you're looking at the flow and you're wanting to have multiple different setups within a very small amount of changes, there was a new tail I tried today that just loosened everything and made me feel like all I wanted to do was rip turns.
Exactly.
Can you give us a quick little run through on that? That was epic.
I'd say 2025 is the year of the high aspects for Slingshot. We brought out our Glides and our E-Series. Those are just the cream of the crop. They work really well for the rider that we intended them for, but we wanted to get a little bit crazier, and so we made the high aspect flow, and you also made these high aspect flare tails. So we have two sizes, 145 and 175, and what you'll notice is they're incredibly short, and they are pretty spicy too. So when the whole thing is together, your overall fuselage length is quite short, and you'd think that that would be really unstable, but we actually have pretty aggressive pitch angle on here. I think it's like 4.7 degrees negative on the 145 and like 3.7 on the 175. So you still get a lot of that stability in the tail, but what it does is it really unlocks the yaw, because it's less distance that wing has to go through the water to be able to turn from side to side. Then on the pumping, it's actually a lot more efficient because of that aspect ratio as well. 11 aspect ratio, so the same as the flows, and they pair really well with both these wings. Like I said, prefer the Glide and kind of the bigger waves that I want to have a bit more stability in when I get into those dicey sections. I still pair it with the flare tail, and that really unlocks the tail. So I don't feel like it's as much of a Cadillac anymore where it's super stable. I like to have that kind of playfulness in the back and the stability in the front.
And again, just that feeling of the easing off of the handbrake, while at the same time you've given yourself this ability to play. It was
it's pretty amazing.
Very
feeling.
Noticeable. The same front foil with that new tail just really changed the whole setup and made it really playful. So it was
so
nice.
In terms of like talking about the progression, how do I get from the Glide to the Flow? If you have the Glide with the 180 tail, which is the kind of all-around tail that we sell, or the 270, which is more beginner, you'd want to jump stabilizer first. So we always call it the stabilizer step method, which is basically it's easier to try a new stabilizer that livens it up a bit than to get a whole new front wing and try to relearn how the wing is going to ride, right? And so in ours, we have the 270, which is our big beginner. Then you jump to the 180. Then after that, you could go 175 on this wing, and you might be happy and content just riding like that. And then if you wanted to get that efficiency and projection, then you jump back to this Flow, and maybe you put your 180 back on for that stability like you did today, right? Just to figure out the front wing without having to deal with the back, and then you'd eventually jump onto this smaller back wing. So they pair really well with both wings.
And we were really impressed. Comments today from the whole range of the new level of playfulness in the riding, but then that quality and that ability to just get everything together and on the water quick. I mean, it's really thought out, and we're absolutely loving it. So
awesome. It's good to hear.
If you are keen to try any of the Slingshot gear, hit us up at kiterepublic.com.au, and a massive thank you to Fred Hope for coming down under, talking us through
I like it.
And getting us out there on the water. Cheers. Enjoy, guys.